Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley. Thanks for joining me today. I am here at Altenew for a special guest post, and I am sharing this project today. It is a Christmas themed card project, but I'm using a lot of everyday themed products to create this. So I wanted to kind of walk you through and show you how I put this all together. I'm starting out with this Leafy wreath die, and this is one of those wreaths that you can use year-round. The shape of the leaves are very forgiving. They're not overly like holly or Christmas kind of leaves, so you can use that year-round, and in fact, it was designed as a year-round leaf. I'm also using the pinstripe background and this mini Christmas stamp set. Now, obviously, this one is a Christmas themed product, but you could easily switch out this sentiment for a thinking of you or a thank you and have a card that you could use year round. So I'm going to start out by cutting my Leafy wreath die, and I am using a couple of different shades of green cardstock. I opted for a more yellowy or olive green tones, but you could definitely do this with some mintier green tones and create a different feeling on this card as well. Now, to get my die cuts out of the die, I am using the lazy man's way. I am just slamming my die on my work surface, and those die cuts seem to just pop right out. So if you're not feeling like hunting down your pokey tool, just try slamming it on your work surface. It works for me. Now I'm also cutting this Leafy wreath die from some vellum as well. I have a couple of layers of vellum that I'm going to add, and I'm just adding a little bit of zig two-way glue pen behind this wreath, and I'm going to start stacking these up. This is going to build a little bit of depth in the wreath and add a whole lot of fullness. So I'm starting out with the two different colors of green cardstock that I die cut. I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to add a little more liquid glue on the back, and then I'm going to add my 2 layers of vellum. Now, I'm going to move this white mat out of the way so you can see what I'm doing, because this first layer of vellum, I'm kind of cheating it up towards the top of this stacked up die cuts here. And then the second layer of vellum, I'm going to kind of cheat towards the bottom or shift it towards the bottom. That is also going to add a lot more fullness in the wreath and help you see all the different element layers that we have going on here. Now, I really thought I would be done at this point, but I needed to add a little bit of shine to this wreath. So I'm using a little bit of the Altenew gold foil cardstock, and I'm going to die cut this die once again. And this time, so that you can really see this gold layer, I'm going to actually snip this apart, and I'm going to adhere the top half and the bottom half separately, just to allow me to kind of pull it out from behind all these other layers that we've created. So you'll see me flip that layered up die cut over there, and I'm going to add my liquid adhesive to the back, and then I'm going to add the upper portion and the lower portion separately. If I would have left this die cut all as one piece, you wouldn't see nearly as much of that gold foil peeking out from behind. So now I'm going to flip all of these layers over, and I'm going to add some foam adhesive to the back. And I am just taking and trimming this foam adhesive down into little slivers here, and I'm going to put that all around my wreath. Now, I did decide that I wanted 2 layers, so I went ahead and stacked that foam adhesive one layer on top of the other, and that's just going to give my wreath even more dimension. And now I'm going to work on my sentiment piece. So I've prepped the surface of my vellum with a powder tool, and I'm stamping this Merry Christmas sentiment in some clear embossing ink onto this vellum. This vellum measures about 1.5 inches wide. And then I'm going to sprinkle on some gold embossing powder and heat set that. Now, once again, this is one of those definitely Christmas themed products in this project. But I'm hoping as we go along, you're going to see that you could actually substitute out just a couple of things in this and create an everyday card as well. Once I have that embossed, I'm going to go ahead and trim that into a banner end by cutting a slit up the center and then cutting from each corner to that center slit. And I'm going to set that aside while I work on another element. I am inking up this pinstripe background stamp in some ruby red ink, and I'm going to stamp it onto some plain white cardstock. So when I stamp these larger stamps like this, I like to actually take my cardstock to the stamp. So I'll leave the stamp face up on my work surface, and I'll place my cardstock face down onto that stamp. And then I'm going to cover it with a piece of scrap paper and just rub all over while I keep one hand kind of holding that cardstock in place. And then I have a perfect impression on this 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of cardstock. Now, I originally thought I would use it as a complete cover to my card, and I end up changing my mind further on down the road, and I'll show you that here in just a bit. For now, I'm going to take the Climbing Clematis stamp set, and I am going to stamp that larger, kind of more open flower onto some plain white cardstock. And I really wanted this to tie in with the red pinstripes that I created. So I've grabbed this set of red and pink inks from Altenew, and I'm stamping the various layers. Now I ended up skipping that frosty pink ink. I just didn't want my flower to feel too pink. So I started with Coralberry, and I'm stamping the second layer in Ruby Red. Now, once I get that second layer stamped, I'm actually going to stamp the third layer in Ruby Red as well. So when I stamp that color on top of itself, it will intensify that area just a bit. I will say you don't get quite as much contrast when you use the same color twice, but it is something that you can do. And you can always skip a layer as well. For the final layer of that Clematis, I went ahead and stamped that in Grapevine ink, and then I stamped the center portion with some Warm Sunshine. And I am taking this little kind of dot image that's in the stamp set, and I'm stamping that in jet black ink. Now, I don't really even know what Clematis look like. I am not a botanist by any means. I do not have a green thumb. I just know a pretty flower when I see one. And for me, creating this in red was the perfect kind of Christmas flower for this project here. Now, I wanted some greenery in the background as well, and I decided to use something that's definitely Christmas. These elements are from the Christmas Bow stamp set. I'm also going to be using the coordinating dies, and I'm stamping this in olive ink and then also in moss ink. I love these two colors. Now, some of those elements of greenery are not necessarily Christmas, but you see that pine bough right there? That's definitely Christmas. But if you swap this out and took out that pine bough, you could take away the Christmas feeling of the background that we're creating. You could create this with just some other greenery images that you may have in some other stamp sets. So you'll notice here I'm actually stamping all of the green portions at once, and then I'm going to die cut these images. I'm not stamping the stems yet. I prefer when I have to stamp a stem inside to die cut first and then stamp the stem, and then I don't have to worry about getting it at the right angle for the coordinating die. I know that when I stamp the stem on there, once it's die cut already, that I'm stamping it at the correct angle. So it just saves me a little bit of mess up here and there on items like this. So I'm stamping these stems and branches in some espresso ink, and then I went ahead and kind of arranged it on my card like I think I want it. Now, I have a lot of elements, and they're all separate right now. So the things that I know are working, I'm going to go ahead and assemble those so I can move them as one piece. So I'm adhering my sentiment piece to my wreath. I'm going to adhere it to the back and then just flip it over towards the front. And then I'm going to start adhering the greenery onto this card base. This is a panel that's cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. It's some Nina Solar White cardstock. And I'm adhering this greenery that's in the background using some tape runner adhesive, and I'm kind of tucking it behind itself. If I would have had the foresight to know that I was going to include this in the background, I could have just stamped this onto the card base, but let's be honest, I wasn't thinking that far ahead. So I don't always, have it all together. I'm kind of creating as I go and changing my plans as I go, and that's always okay. So now I have my flower adhered to my wreath. I have my greenery in the background, and now I'm going to slide this pinstripe cardstock that I created right behind some of that greenery, and then I'm taking it over to my trimmer and trimming it off at the edge. it had no adhesive on it at this point. So I'm going to lift up the edge and add some tape runner adhesive behind that. And this is going to allow this to come right through the center of that wreath, but I'm not going to have the pattern all over the background of the stamp. So you can see when I adhere my wreath here, you just have those pinstripes kind of peeking through the center portion of that wreath. Now I adhered my wreath onto this card, and then I decided I needed some black accents. So I'm going to add just a strip of black cardstock to the bottom of this sentiment banner that I created. It's about an 1/8 inch wide, and I just adhered it using some liquid adhesive and then just trimmed off the extra. And that wasn't enough black for me. So close your eyes if you're weak at heart, because I'm going to chop right through all of those layers that I just adhered to the card base. I just trimmed off 1/4 inch off the edge of that, and this is going to allow me to add one more little strip of black cardstock along that card front edge. And then I can flip this over, add some tape runner adhesive all over the back or onto the card base, I guess I'm doing. And then adhere my card front to my A2 size card base. Now to finish off my card, I added some clear sequins to the front of the card, and I also added a bow on that wreath that I created using some burlap twine mixed with some black and white baker's twine, and I think that that is such a fun element on the bottom of this wreath. I also went back and added just a bit of glossy accents in the center of my flower to draw a little more attention to that beautiful red flower that we added to the wreath, and that completed my card. So you can see how I took everyday elements, pinstripe, the climbing clematis, and the leafy wreath die, and combined it with just a couple of Christmas themed products and created a Christmas card. So you could definitely swap out that greenery in the background for a more everyday kind of greenery that's not quite so Christmassy. And you could switch out the sentiment as well and have a really beautiful thank you or thinking of you card. As always, I will have links to the featured products used in this project in the description at YouTube, but head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. I'll have that linked below. Over there, you can find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you won't miss any of my card making and paper crafting video tutorials. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end. You know, if you've made it this far, you are one of my favorites. If you want to subscribe to my channel, go ahead and click that button on the left side of the screen. And here's a couple more video tutorials I thought you might enjoy.